Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, as always, joined alongside Joe Kimetz for a special Saturday morning edition, a little something different this week. Going to be going over a bunch of different stuff. Going to be going over the bowl games today, some college basketball plays we like, and then wrapping up with the college football playoff predictions and picks for Monday night, and maybe even sprinkle in some NFL talk with the NFL game tonight. But Joe, looks like you're alive, ready to go on this Saturday morning. How are we feeling?
I'm alive, Coyle. Definitely, that's a good word for it. Coyle knows. It was up to about 5:30 in the morning, and I promised Coyle, like yesterday, maybe even the day before, like, oh yeah, I'll do it 11 in the morning. It was one of those. As I was laying down, I'm like, oh, this is gonna suck because I did, and I woke up. I alarm at 11 o'clock. I woke up, and here I am, and I'm ready to roll. I'm locked in. Let's do it. Bowl season, best time of the year. We had the Pop Tart mascot sacrificing himself. It was fantastic. They ate him. It was great. Love bowl season. Love this time of year. It's all gas, no brakes until the end of March Madness now, sports wise. So I mean, you can't ask for more.
Yeah, so I mean, we're right a little after 11:30. We got action starting up at 12. Joe, give it to you first. You want to start with the bowl games or some college basketball talk before we wrap up with the playoff?
I say let's do college basketball first because then we can end kind of with football. Hold on.
All right. Well, I mean, we got a bunch of games today. The last weekend before we're really fully in to conference play in college basketball, but you do have some conference play games. One of your teams, at least in football, they have a game today versus Virginia. Your Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Very low total in that game. Virginia is a 9.5 point favorite at Notre Dame. The total is 116.5 right now. Any plays you like in that matchup, Joe?
I mean, I would take Virginia to cover the spread. Notre Dame. So I love Notre Dame football. I hope Notre Dame basketball does well, but I'm a UConn, for all of their sports for the most part, because in my opinion, UConn football isn't even on the same level as these other FBS schools. So that's why I root for Notre Dame. But watching Notre Dame basketball, Coyle, I think the only time I've actually watched them win a game was when you guys were up here and they beat Oklahoma State in that. I forget what the name of the tournament was, but they played at the Barclays
At
Center.
Barclays, yeah.
Yeah, but they won that game, and I was like shocked. I don't know how Notre Dame is going to fare. Like the way Virginia plays, like they might win 50-40, but I still think they can cover that 9.5. There's going to probably be like 30 people at the game. New Year's Eve weekend.
Hmm.
No one's even in school to begin with. I think it's going to be dead in terms of atmosphere. So it's kind of good that Virginia's getting this out of the way now because one thing Notre Dame basketball does do when they have, the big teams come into town, they do show up. I remember, like every year when they play Duke, it's always a madhouse. Normally, if this was any other circumstances, it'd probably be a bigger crowd, but I kind of like the Virginia. And if you're going to go with Virginia, 116 is a low total. I'm going to stay away from it, but I would probably lean towards the over, but definitely like Virginia.
Yeah, I actually got the under on my card in this one. I got the under at 116 about an hour ago. This Notre Dame team, they're really struggling. This is a full rebuild that they have going there. And when you have a defense like Virginia come into town against a not very talented team, we've seen what Virginia can do. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame scored like only 40 points in this game, like a 60-40 type game. Like I think this game is definitely going under. I think Notre Dame's really going to struggle to score the basketball in this one. So I do like the under in this one. Then we flip it to a much more exciting game, at least potentially, at 2 o'clock. You have Creighton traveling to Marquette. This is a big game in the Big East between two of the top teams. And all eyes are on this one. This is the lone, I believe, Big East Conference game of the day. Creighton 0-1 in the Big East. Marquette 1-1 in the Big East. Got a high total in this game. Marquette's a 3.5 point favorite. On my card, I got the over at 150 last night. I took it. That number is all the way up to 153.5 now. So I think this is going to be funnest college basketball game of the day. A really up tempo, high scoring game. But Joe, what do you like in this matchup? Anything pique your interest?
Yeah, cool. I was kind of like you. I was looking at this game last night. I liked the over at around like 150. Currently, like you said, at 153. I still kind of like the over in this game. And I also like Marquette. I got Marquette here at -3.5. Both teams, that I know, Creighton's 0-1, Marquette only 1-1. could both benefit from a big win here early on in Big East play. Creighton potentially, on fraud alert. They haven't looked great against good competition going on the road. I like Marquette here. Even if they win by 5, I like them to cover that 3.5 coil. I don't know what you're seeing it at right now, but I like Marquette to cover that spread in this game.
Yeah, I saw a pretty wild stat about Marquette at home under Shaka Smart. I believe, yeah, Marquette has not lost a Big East home game since January 1st, 2022. That was a double overtime game against Creighton. So it's been quite a while since they've done that. They won 19 straight home conference games, and they're 36-4 at home under Shaka Smart. That's thanks to our guy John Fanta. So this a Marquette team that's been one of the best in the country at home, but Creighton, like you were saying, a little bit of desperation mode, potentially losing that first game in conference play at home to a so-so Villanova squad. I think they're going to come into this one hungry, but I don't know if I'm confident enough to pick them to win this game. So I do really like the points. So I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, maybe like in the played in the 80s, first one to 90 potentially type win. So I think that's going to be a really fun one. Another game that's piquing my interest between two 9-3 teams, ACC schools, both 0-1 in the conference. This is Pitt at Syracuse. Another game where I have the over of 148. I think these are two teams that can really light it up, and both teams that are going to be flirting with a bubble spot most of the season. So, Joe, just curious, do you like anything in this game, or do you see any potential tournament run for a team like Pitt or a team like Syracuse this year?
It's one of those things I can kind of see a run more so for Pitt. I wouldn't be shocked if Syracuse gets there. I just think Pitt, having the experience from last season, I think they're kind of more poised to make a run. This is a game because I got the spread currently 1.5. I would go Syracuse on the money line just because my luck. I'd bet the 1.5. Syracuse would win by 1. I'd be upset, but if I had to lean, anything in this game, I would go Syracuse to cover. They really impressed me against Oregon Coil. We had them on the show maybe
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks ago, maybe even last week. I don't know what the holidays. It's kind of all blends together. But they really impressed me with that win against Oregon. So I kind of like Syracuse. I do think if I don't know if they're going to be able to get there necessarily, but kind of like I was saying, if they get to the tournament, I think they're going to be kind of poised for a run. I just think Pitt has the better chance in the long term of getting to the tournament than Syracuse. Like kind of, if we're looking at these two like stocks, I think
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh is the better investment than Syracuse. But for this game specifically, like Syracuse at home.
Yeah, this is a good, I guess we could say early season kind of measuring stick game, see where some of these teams are at. Syracuse, they had a pretty tough non-conference schedule, but that's where most of their losses have came from the tougher games. I want to see if they can beat, a potential tournament team here in Pitt. I'll read off the rest of my card before we travel over to college football. And then Joe, if you have any other plays that you like, but my plays of the day, I got Harvard +2. They're my dog of the day. Looking to cash another one there. Syracuse Pitt over 148 that we touched on. Notre Dame Virginia under 116 that we touched on. I like Merrimack -2. Marquette Creighton over 150. I think that's up to 153.5 now. I still like that. I think that's going to be in the 80s that game. I like Marist -5.5 against Lehigh. Santa Clara -1.5 against Yale. Florida Atlantic, Florida Gulf Coast over 142.5. And then Arkansas UNC Wilmington over 147.5 are the plays I like the most today in college basketball. Joe, you got any other plays you want to throw in there as well?
So I have two plays that I love kind of off the bat. I love UCLA +7.5 at Oregon. Kind of like I was alluding to a little earlier, that loss against Syracuse kind of put a bad taste in my mouth with this Oregon team. Could have just been an anomaly, using big words on a Saturday morning. But I like UCLA to cover that spread there. And another spread I love, this is kind of a fun game. Kansas going to Wichita State. I like Wichita State to cover 12.5. I'm not saying they're going to win the game, but that is one, fan base. They might not be large, but they're
Mhm.
very, very vocal. Especially, Wichita State's had a couple of weird years, after Greg Marshall got fired, because of the whole scandal. But I really like Wichita State at home. I think that arena is going to be rocking. Not saying they're going to win the game, but definitely like them to cover 12.5. And currently, I'm looking at 12.5 at -102. So that line might even move up by a point. I would love it if it went to 13.5. Still like it at 12.5. And then one more play I had written down here. I like Ohio State in the Peacock, or it might even be on NBC, kind of the night game Or no, this is on Fox. Excuse me, I apologize. I saw this is like the primetime hoops game. I like Ohio State minus the 9.5. West Virginia, haven't watched a lot of them this year, but year one without Bob Huggins going to Ohio State primetime game. You're gonna probably get a good crowd, even with the students on winter break there. Give me Ohio State to cover,
Mm.
and those are my plays of the day. Maybe lean towards the under in the Houston Penn game as well, 132.5.
All right. Well, we'll transition over to college football now, where we have one, two, three, four bowl games on the schedule today. One starting off at noon in about 15 minutes. You got Ole Miss coming into this game at 10-2, playing Penn State 10-2. Peach Bowl. Penn State up to a 5.5 point favorite. Over under in this one, 52.5. I'm not so sure about the over under in this one. I stayed away from that, but I do really like Ole Miss to win this game. When you look at Penn State this year, Joe, it really was the defense. The defense did a lot of their work for them. Defensive coordinator Manny Diaz has left. He's the head coach at Duke now. Their top cornerback, Kalen King, he opted out of this one. Their top defensive end, Chop Robinson, he opted out of this one. This is a team that isn't the same defensive unit coming into this bowl game. And Ole Miss is one of those rare teams where they didn't really lose much at all. Jackson Dart playing, and they did work in the portal. I know that's not going to impact them now, but you combine the big time bowl win here over Penn State with a bunch of your returning guys for next year, with probably the best transfer portal class coming in. This is a team that might be a top five team going into next year. You want to build as much momentum as possible, and they have all the motivation in the world to do that. So I like Ole Miss to go win this game outright. I think you can tell them to keep the points. If you want to play it safe, do that. But I like Ole Miss to win this football game outright. No need to have the 5.5. I took it last night at 4.5. It's the line's been moving a bunch this morning. Penn State's top offensive tackle Olu Fashanu's out as well. He for opt out for declaring for the draft. So it's a game I like Ole Miss to go out there and win it outright. Curious to see your thoughts on this.
Yeah, cool. I'm kind of with you on Ole Miss to cover the spread. We were kind of talking about it before the show. I'm surprised that the line is moving, the opposite direction. If anything, I was expecting it to kind of go closer towards, Ole Miss in terms of becoming a favorite almost. I'm with you. I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to take the 5.5 because that's one thing about bowl season. You never know. Like, look at that Missouri Ohio State game last night. It was ugly.
Mhm.
It was 3-0. And then it was like all of a sudden, Mizzou was able to kind of close the door. I think the final ended up being 14-3. Ugly football game. It was one of those we had kind of all sat down, started watching it. By the end of the first quarter, we were like, "Oh, this is like painful to really watch." We had it on while we were doing other things, but I like Ole Miss to cover that 5.5. I'm definitely staying away, Coyle, kind of like you were saying from that total. I don't really know how to feel about that one, but I definitely like Ole Miss to cover.
Yeah, another weird one here. A lot of opt outs from Maryland, including their quarterback, but you got Auburn versus Maryland in the Trans Perfect Music City Bowl. I took on this one, it's another one. I took all my plays last night. I was kind of locked in, and I didn't want to wake up and see a bunch of lines move. So I took my plays last night. I got the over of 47.5 in this game. Auburn, they've been such an up and down team all year, and Maryland as well with their quarterback being out. Obviously, that is a big loss. So it was one of those games where I didn't feel confident enough taking a side in it. But I do think it could be kind of similar to what we saw with a pretty wild game yesterday with Kentucky and Clemson, where a low total, but two pretty even teams. I think they're going to go back and forth, exchange some touchdowns. It wouldn't surprise me to see this be like a 35-31 type game. So I definitely think the over is the play. And I mean, besides like that Mizzou game that you were just talking about, Ohio State, a lot of these bowl games have been higher scoring affairs. We've seen a lot of points. So I think the over is the play in that game. Curious if you have anything in that one.
Yeah, cool. I initially didn't have any plays. If I do have to lean, though, I'm going to take Auburn to cover the spread. This is kind of, I say it a lot. If you're going to pick a game out of conference, always kind of lean towards the SEC. I know
Hmm.
people were making a big deal. They didn't have the best out of conference record this year. That's one thing I'm going to always feel confident in is taking the SEC. So I'm going to go Auburn minus the 4.5 for a pick, but I'm probably going to end up staying away from this game. Maybe Coyle, tail you with the over, but not really confident with a lot in this game.
And then next game is I don't have a play in this one right now. I kind of want to see how I do in the early portion of college football and some of these noon and 2 o'clock college basketball games. But it's Georgia versus Florida State. Georgia's up to a 21-point favorite in this one now, over under 45.5. Just don't really have a read on this game at all. I was thinking, all right, maybe take like Georgia's like team total points. If you want to get them at like even 32.5, they need like this is a this is such a bizarre game. It's if you're the Action Network, the bowl like opt out list are players that aren't playing. It is insane. Like you won't even recognize the two teams that you saw all year. And obviously that was the big thing with Florida State getting left out. They don't have their quarterback, blah, 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 blah. We've heard the story, but their backup quarterback, Rodemaker, entered the transfer portal. Their top two receivers, Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, those guys are opting out, declaring for the draft. Jaheim Bell, their tight end, to the draft. Defensive end, Jared Verse, to the draft. Starting running back, Trey Benson, to the draft. Like all these guys are out. Georgia, once they didn't make the playoff, they had opt outs. Brock Bowers. It sounds like McConkey might not play. Their starting linebacker, Jason Dumas Johnson, he already committed to Kentucky. Like, there's completely different teams. So don't really have anything much concrete data on this one. Just curious, do you have anything in this one, Joe?
Coyle, I placed a bet on Georgia to cover the spread the day the bowl game got released. I actually have Georgia at minus 14 at minus 110. I placed it on December 3rd. I'm a very happy man right now because that spreads all the way up to 21 and a half. If it was now, Coyle, I'm kind of like you. I have no clue what to think about this game with all the opt-outs. I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State covers the 21 and a half is a lot of points. And kind of like
Yeah.
you were saying too, Coyle, for the most part, we've been having kind of higher scoring games. What I'm looking at here, I'm seeing 73% of the money's on Georgia, which makes sense. I mean, Florida State, I feel like kind of like you were saying, Coyle, with all the opt-outs, and it's tough. People were talking initially about like it's tough for them to get up after getting left out for the playoff. I
Yep.
feel like Kirby Smart has those guys locked in, and like, listen, we're not losing. Like I feel like Georgia, this could be a game you look up and be like, oh, they won 56-10. That makes sense. Like I could see Kirby kind of keeping his foot on the gas and kind of, ending the season with a statement after a very disappointing loss to Alabama.
All right. Quick. We got a few more minutes to go before we're up against the noon window. Anything in the Toledo Wyoming game? I have Wyoming minus 3.5. Their coach is retiring after the game. Toledo's quarterback and their star running back have both entered the portal, and they lost that MAC title game. I figure it's kind of a deflating end to their season. They don't really want to be there, and Wyoming wants to send them off right. I got Wyoming minus 3.5. Anything in that one, Joe?
Yeah, Coyle, I won't even try to make a play. I have nothing right now. I might sprinkle something later. I might take Wyoming with you though, Coyle, because kind of you have a coach retiring. Feel like the guys are going to get up for that. He's been there for a while too. I think at least like 10 years. Players love him. I would love to
Steak
see.
knives on Wyoming.
What was that?
Steak knives on Wyoming in the
Oh, the
chat.
knife sound. You got to take Wyoming. If steak knives on Wyoming, you got to take Wyoming.
All right. Transition NFL real quick. We got a big one tonight with Detroit and Dallas. Give me an anytime touchdown score in this game, Joe. It's the highest total of the NFL season, I believe, at 53.5. 52.5 right now. I saw it at 53.5 yesterday. Give me an anytime touchdown score in this game.
I like Jake Ferguson, tight end for Dallas, anytime. If
Plus
you want to
115.
if you want to get a little frisky, I kind of like Dak anytime. I don't know. I feel like this might be one of those he kind of scramble drill on like the 5 yard line. I could see him kind of running in. But if I had to definitely solidify a pick, I would take Jake Ferguson.
I like Montgomery, David Montgomery, minus 105. I feel like more times than not, he finds his way into the end zone. And it's been getting a little bit tricky down around the goal line with him and Gibbs, with who's been getting the touches. But in a game that's supposed to be this high scoring, I expect them to have ample red zone opportunities against a Dallas defense that hasn't been that great in these past few weeks. And I think they're going to be a little susceptible to a rushing touchdown here by David Montgomery. All right, Joe, to wrap it up, quick rapid fire. Give me your two winners on the college football playoff on Monday night. First, Alabama, Michigan. Second game, Texas, Washington. And then if you like any of the over-unders in that game, in either of those games.
So I like Texas here. I said Texas in the preseason, our week 0 show. I had Texas winning it all. I have a future on Texas to win the national title. So I'm going to go Texas over Washington. I think Washington's a great story. I just think Texas has more talent. I think they're the better team. I could see Texas winning this game pretty big. I'm going to go towards the over as well in that game. And then Bama, Michigan, I have no clue. I think Bama's going to win. I think we're going to get a Texas Bama rematch in the national title game. I just think Harbaugh, time and time again, has shown he gets to the postseason and just cannot win. I think
Mhm.
he's like 1-6 in bowl games all time as a coach. And, a lot of people can say whatever they want. Oh, a lot of those bowl games are meaningless. Who cares? It's still the postseason. He hasn't shown the ability to win at the college level in the postseason, especially with a lot of rumors of him going to the NFL next year. I am leaning towards Alabama. I think we might get a Bama national title, and Nick Saban rides off into the sunset and retires. That's kind of my bold prediction.
Wow. All right. I do like Alabama as well. The thing with that matchup I was really looking at is the turnovers. I believe it's Michigan has 7 turnovers the entire season. Yeah, 7 turnovers the entire season. 3 were in 1 game, and I was really surprised to see this. I was like, of course, the 1 game was against Bowling Green. JJ McCarthy threw 3 turnovers, and they had a fumble. So, sorry, they had 4 turnovers in the 1 game. I was like, Why would they happen against Bowling Green?" I went and looked. Bowling Green was actually number 1 in the country this year in forced turnovers with 28 forced turnovers. So that was pretty wild to see. But when you look at the 2 college football playoff games for Michigan, against Georgia and against TCU, 3 turnovers in each game. They've seemed to be turnover prone in these big spots. I think Alabama forces a few, and I think they find a way to win this game. And then I'm actually going to go with Washington. I've been a Washington backer all year. I think that's going to be a really fun, high scoring game. But Washington kind of has that underdog mentality. Uh, they don't have an easy matchup at all with those wide receivers with Texas. Like Texas is going to struggle to contain them. I think Texas has the best rush defense in the country, but that's a great thing for Washington because Washington can go out there and sling the pill 45 times and hope to win this game in a shootout. So I think that one's going to be a really fun and exciting game. But give me a Washington Alabama national title. Any last second words before we head out, Joe?
No, and everyone enjoy their New Year, enjoy their weekend, enjoy the college football playoff. 3 games of college football, like that meaningful college football left in the season. Enjoy it. We'll be talking again for the national title game, and I'm assuming we'll do something for next weekend for college basketball as well. But I hope everyone had a good holiday, and here's to a great 2024.
Yes, sir. Like you said, Joe, happy holidays, happy new year. Enjoy the games today, and good luck on all your picks.